Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people follow exact orders to spite someone, or because they feel like it. Guys, in today's episode, we've got Karen teachers messing with law students, a Karen who won't obey OP and destroys her career, and OP tells the story about the time her friend obeyed her boss and got loads of free money. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So I have a very good friend who maliciously complied her way into getting paid for essentially doing absolutely nothing for 19 months. It was a government job, so no surprise there. She and her colleague worked in a state office that kept track of plague cases among prairie dog towns. They were super busy, trapping and testing all summer. But once winter comes, prairie dogs hibernate, so they ran out of work. They told their boss via email that there was no more to do for the season that first autumn, and their boss responded by telling them to stand by for reassignment. So they did, for months. Now, they didn't want to be accused of theft by just clocking in and out and leaving. So in the very beginning, they organized some storage spaces very slowly, and they cleaned their office several times, organizing paperwork and doing that sort of thing. When they ran out of things to do, they started sleeping, doing schoolwork, Sudoku, what have you. Initially, they slept in shifts, so someone was always available if anyone came to check on them. But when it became obvious that no one was coming, they stopped bothering. By summer the following year, when the prairie dogs came out of hibernation, she thought her work might resume. That's when the whole office, all the employees in every department, receives an email from someone higher up, informing everyone that particular department had been cut. Now, I don't know if it was unfunded, or they got all the necessary data the previous summer, or that particular pet project of some politician was forgotten about. But somewhere along the line, the State Fish and Game axed the project for whatever reason. Nothing was mentioned in the email about her job status, so her and her coworker continued to go in and do nothing. She would tell me about roping two office chairs together facing each other to sleep in the seats, and also making a nest under her desk and moving a largish copy machine out of its cabinet and sleeping inside of it. They made sure the security people saw them periodically throughout the day, and they were on camera, so anyone above them paying attention would have noticed, but no one ever took the time. They dodged folks in the other departments for fear that they would get told on, and just minded their own business. Eventually, she ran into her boss at a show, and she asked my friend where she found new work. My friend didn't lie, and she said she still worked there. The boss asked her where, and her response was, "Where you left us." She said that you should have seen the look on her face when the lady put the pieces together and realized what's going on. The jig was finally up, and she and her colleague were let go that following morning via email before they went in. And the cherry on top is because they had technically worked there for so long, I think 2 years was the threshold, they both got a nice little severance package. And in case you're wondering, they got to keep their pay, since 1, they had proof that they informed their boss they had no work and she clearly saw the email and responded. 2, they still showed up. 3, they did exactly what they were told, and 4, it wasn't their job to make sure they actually had work to do. They both qualified for unemployment to boot. Neither of them used the unemployment, since they'd both had a feeling that the gravy train was sure to derail any day, so they had new jobs lined up. Also, my friend asked me to include some more things they did with their time while standing by. Number 1. One autumn, she and her colleague decorated the shared nap hiding spot, which was a walk-in storage closet with miniature Halloween decorations, and then reenacted scenes from Hocus Pocus. Number 2, she spent a whole lot of time editing Wikipedia for grammar mistakes. Number 3, she learned to knit, and then she learned she doesn't like knitting. Number 4, her colleague downloaded plans from the internet on how to make personal flying devices, think jetpack, and then they tried to make it with office supplies at 1/16th scale. They knew it wouldn't fly, they just wanted to see if they could build what it would look like. Number 5. During Christmas, they wrote all new jingles about how bored they were. There were 14 completed songs total, and they recorded them on this little mini tape recorder she still has. Number 6. Her colleague went to night school and did his homework during the day. by the time they were finally let go, he was just shy of becoming a paralegal. He did finish school and pretty much went straight into a job, and all these years later, he's now a real estate attorney. Good for him. And number 7, she wrote a bunch of serial killers in prison and told them how disappointed she was in them. She never did receive a reply. And for all of you wondering what my friend does now, she got a glowing reference from this state job, and she went on to work at our city zoo, and then got her certification in wildlife rehab. She now works as a public outreach coordinator for a big cat sanctuary. And no, she doesn't miss her old job of either juggling plague-ridden prairie dogs or being bored out of her mind. Holy moly, that sounds like a dream job to me, guys. Keeping busy doing absolutely whatever and getting paid for it. But yeah, 19 months. 19 friggin' months is how long OP's friend got away with it before getting found out. Like, I've always heard people saying that some government jobs are cushy and basically guarantees job security for life. But I never thought it would be like this at all. Like, the fact that nobody was like, we got money going to these 2 people and it's been well over a year is absolutely wild. And guys, the thing is, I bet if she didn't run into her boss at the show they were at, this might have kept going on. And this person shares their similar experience, and they say, a guy I worked with sold his company and he joined Big Blue as a consultant in his company's field. He was assigned a mentor to help him transition from being an individual entrepreneur into a member of a large organization. He was to journal his feelings every day, and then join a weekly group session to discuss. Well, after a couple of weeks, the mentor stopped attending. They continued to meet, and a couple of weeks later, they reached out to the person in HR who hired them all. The HR representative had left the company. They reached out again to a higher level, and they were told to continue with their current assignments and somebody would contact them. So he continued to stay home and write in his journal. It took 18 months before they realized what was happening and they laid off the entire group. He was making $250,000 a year keeping a journal about how effed up his large organization was and how an individual owner would never let this happen. And this person says, my brother worked in a team for an IT department for an airport, and his job was on-call firefighting IT issues 24/7, 365. If they got a call at 3 a.m., they would leap into action and solve this problem ASAP. And then they got a new manager who decided that all calls had to go through him to prioritize and manage. He worked from 9 to 5, so for months, the team brought in sleeping bags and they set up a gaming server for multiplayer matches during the night shift. Everyone was sad when he got sacked for poor performance figures, and the team went back to receiving calls direct from the airport staff. So I work in a union shop, and I've been a shop steward, a union rep, for most of my 25+ year career. In this time, I've seen a lot of crap, both figurative and literal. And every single time I've ever been unwary enough about how fate works to utter the words, now I've seen everything, the universe will hand me its beer and say, watch this. Now, stewards, despite the general perception of us, aren't there to defend employees who are accused of misconduct. We're there to defend the collective bargaining agreement. Meaning, if you've well and truly effed yourself and your future with the agency we both work for, my role is to help you determine which of your options for leaving you're going to exercise. I've been at this rodeo a long time, and management and I generally have a pretty good understanding of how things are going to go. With that said, enter Jackie. Now, Jackie was one of those unbelievably toxic, peaked in high school cheerleader types, with just enough understanding of what our employer does, how it's required to behave within federal guidelines, and what its obligations are when you utter certain mystical phrases like "I need an accommodation" or discrimination based on a protected class. And to be clear, those things are not just law. They're also morally right to be concerned about. And so, my employer actually bends over backwards and does backflips to be certain that they're going above and beyond the minimum. Jackie was also not a minority in any sense. She was female, but in a workplace that's 80% female, that doesn't quite count. The point at which I got involved was at the tail end, over a year's worth of actions by Jackie, in which it rapidly became apparent that her manager was in fact an excellent candidate for canonization. I got referred to her when one of my other union friends contacted me, and they said, "Hey, so Jackie so-and-so just got put on leave, and it's total BS. Can you help?" I get referrals like this a lot, both because I've been around forever and because I have a pretty good track record for ensuring that people accused of stuff they haven't actually done get treated fairly, so nothing stuck out to me as odd. So I contacted Jackie, and she had absolutely no idea why management would put her on admin leave without any warning. They also confiscated all of her agency-issued devices, access, and instructed her that she was to not have any contact at all with anyone she worked with during work hours. This immediately sent up a whole host of red flags. For one thing, I know the senior HR guy who's involved, having been down the road of difficult negotiations with him many times over the years. I don't always agree with him, but he's fair, and usually we come to some sort of middle ground. At any rate, he would never suspend someone out of the blue without a really good reason. So my point is, she knows what she's done. She has to. So I gave her my usual spiel of things to do and things you should not do. I tell her, number 1, don't tell me or our employer things that aren't true, especially if you think it'll make you look bad if you don't. Number 2, don't talk to your coworkers and don't talk to your friends about this, particularly because you live in a town of under 2,000 people and everyone knows everything about everyone else. Number 3, don't talk with management or HR without me present, period. Number 4, when they do start asking questions, keep answers simple, to the point, short. Do not give lengthy explanations. Tell them what they want to know, and otherwise, shut up. And lastly, I've been here and done this many times. I know this process very well. I can't tell you what they're going to do, but I can tell you what I think they're going to do. And I'm usually either right or pretty close to being right. I have been surprised. So nearly 3 weeks went by of radio silence from the agency, other than a bland email saying, "We want to talk with Jackie about utilization of work assignments, tasks, and equipment." Finally, it was go time for a meeting, and I did something I haven't done in a really long time. I physically drove to Jackie's worksite instead of attending virtually, over an hour and a half each way. I thought, what the heck, the weather was nice. We met ahead of going in, and I asked her if she remembered the rules I gave her at the very beginning. She said she did. I asked her if she had been following them. She said she had been very careful to. And I'm thinking, swell, so in we go. During the meeting, it was almost immediately obvious to me from the questions they started asking that Jackie was in serious crap. Not like written warning or pay reduction crap. No, they were going to go for termination, and she was probably going to be very lucky if they decide not to refer it to the DA for criminal prosecution. So with that, here's an abbreviated summary of the high points. Number 1, Jackie had hundreds of confidential documents and electronic files in her personal possession, many of which fall squarely under HIPAA. She had emailed these out of the government system to one of the 4 or 5 personal email addresses she owns. Her explanation for this was questionable. Number 2, Jackie had logged overtime without permission. A lot of overtime. Thousands of dollars worth of overtime. And on one memorable date, when she was vacationing in Europe with her family at the time, she said she had called in to attend a meeting, but she didn't have an answer to why that meeting had apparently been 11 hours long. And nobody remembered her attending by phone or even having an 11-hour-long meeting with her. Number 3, Jackie had audio recordings of disabled and elderly people with whom she was working that she had taken without their consent or knowledge. A lot of them. Number 4, Jackie's overall work product and system activity reliably showed that she was logging in at the start of her day from home, and she worked some in the afternoon. But there were hours and hours of time when her computer was idle. She explained this as participating in union activity, which I know was BS because, lastly, Jackie's not a union steward. Jackie has no idea what the collective bargaining agreement actually says about much of anything, beyond stewards can do whatever they want and management can't say crap, which is uninformed, shall we say. At any rate, steward activity must be recorded and time-coded as such. Jackie's never attended steward training, and so she didn't know this. Apparently nobody ever told her that. And there's more. There's so much more. But to keep it short, I'll summarize the next 4 months of dealing with this woman by pointing back to the cardinal rules I gave her, and simply say that she broke every single one of them. A lot. When it finally got to the dismissal hearing that comes before the "you're fired, get the F out of here" letter, she told me that she wanted to run things because she had some stuff she wanted to cover that she thought I probably wouldn't be A, comfortable doing, which is true because it was irrelevant, B, didn't know much about, which is again true because she'd invented the details, story, and witnesses as participants, and C, she felt like I wasn't really on her side to begin with, and I'm not doing a good enough job of defending her, which is not quite true. She was a member, so my job is representation here. So I tell Jackie, I really don't think that's a good idea. I've done a lot of these. You should let me handle it. Jackie tells me, no, I know what I'm doing, and I talked with my attorney about this a lot. You can't stop me. I tell her, yeah, you're right, I can't, but this isn't going to go the way you think it will. Jackie tells me, I know I'm right, they can't do this to me. I again tell her, this isn't a good idea, but okay, it's your show. So in we went, and we sat down. The senior HR guy I mentioned earlier was there, and he gave me a funny look when I sat back with my laptop closed and said absolutely nothing. And here's the thing. Dismissal meetings are actually our meeting, and we get to run them from start to finish. They're there to listen. And this is when Jackie starts talking. And I do have to give them credit, as they took notes, listened to the things she said, and they kept straight faces the entire time. And this went exactly as I figured it would. Just the things they'd asked her about in the first of several meetings I attended with Jackie, and covered fireable offenses on at least 4 or 5 different subjects, independent of one another. At the end, when she finally wound down, they all turned to me, Jackie included, and asked if I had anything I wanted to cover, or that I thought may have been missed. I say no, I think she's covered everything already. I don't have anything to add. That afternoon, I got the union copy of her dismissal notice. Generally, they're open to at least discussing the option of the worker resigning and giving them a neutral reference going forward, but that wasn't in the cards. The last I heard of Jackie, the Department of Justice was involved with her and her husband, and I'm confident that didn't go well for her either. I do know that she'll never work for the government again, as the letter was pretty explicit about what information they would release to any government agency asking for a reference. So it goes, they followed the collective bargaining agreement, terminating her with ample just cause. Yeah, I don't know what exactly she thought was going to happen when she told OP to let her speak in that meeting, but I'm pretty sure she shot herself in the foot so many times that she's got nothing left. And guys, reading this post, it's honestly terrifying that a person like Jackie held so much confidential documents and information. Like, what was she doing with all that patient information that she emailed herself? Like, geez Louise, some people, right? And honestly, I can't see it ending well for her. Like, on top of all that HIPAA stuff, she lied, basically stole thousands of dollars, and recorded patients without their knowledge or consent. Like, for what? Like, this is the stuff that'll land you in prison, I'm pretty sure. Okay. So the trite wisdom is that in law school, year 1, they scare you to death, year 2, they work you to death, and year 3, they bore you to death. That wasn't so much for me because year 1, I was scared as hell. Year 2, I worked my ass off, but also worked my ass off year 3, thanks to my role as president of a large student club. I ran for the position of president with lofty goals in mind. I was friends with the assistant dean, who was the advisor to the club, having worked with her for the last year when I was on the board. All of my big plans were dashed to pieces when she stepped down, and the law school incarnation of Dolores Umbridge replaced her. The outgoing assistant dean would come to the student competitions to watch, and she would interact and fight on behalf of students. She was a queen. Her replacement, Miss Umbridge, was a busy mid-level administrator with bigger fish to fry. It became clear that her mission was 1. To reduce her workload, 2. To reduce the budget, and 3. To do those things regardless of how it impacted student learning opportunities. In the fall, she imposed a rule that students would only be permitted to travel once per year, with school permission. We challenged and held a meeting and voiced our discontent. She kept the policy. We retaliated by getting stakeholder attorneys outside the law school together to write a letter to the dean of the school. Then she rolled back the policy. This sort of thing happened all year. She would reduce student opportunities and we would push back. Suffice to say, we were both fed up with each other by the end of the year, but we also reached compromises on most of the friction points. Finally, April rolls around, and with graduation around the corner, I think she was under the impression that she could sneak one more policy change through the gates and I wouldn't care. She shot me an email a few weeks before graduation, formalizing the policy changes that we had fought over all year, except she rolled back the travel policy the administration agreed to. This was completely her style though. No conversation, no discussion, just a top-down change that would make our lives difficult. I was vexed extra because we had hashed this policy out earlier in the year and we reached a compromise. Now I don't know if she thought I wouldn't notice or I would be too tired to fight that close to graduation, but I figured I had nothing to lose. It should also be emphasized that the policy she created hurt students by restricting them from traveling, and it benefited her by allowing her to do less work, but otherwise did not benefit the law school in any way. The school was not bearing the cost of travel. The policy adopted merely denied students permission to travel. So I hit the forward button, and I typed an email to the group of attorneys who had written the letter earlier in the year, explaining the administration had just adopted the policy they had talked to the dean about earlier. In the email, I included the policy she had written. I hit send. I then typed her an email, explaining that I had just sent the policy along to the attorneys, and left it at that. Less than a minute later, I receive an email from her. The email read, "This is an internal policy, and I did not give you permission to release it outside of the school. Please recall the email." So I hopped onto the email chain with the attorneys, and I typed out a recall message. I typed out, "Dear attorney stakeholders, please note that Miss Umbridge has requested this email be recalled. Please do not read the attached policy, as she's indicated that it's an internal document and does not want anyone outside the administration to have access to it or know its contents. Please consider my previous email recalled." I hit send. And then back to Dolores, I typed, "I've sent an email recalling my previous email and let the coaches know that they're not open to the policy, since it's an internal document." This is when Umbridge says back to me, "There's a feature in the emails that allows you to recall a message after having sent, so it does not reach the intended recipient. Please recall the messages immediately." Now, maybe I'm technologically obtuse, but it took me a few minutes to Google this feature. By the time I did, I learned that an email can only be recalled in a short amount of time after it's sent, like 30 seconds to a minute. So I say to Miss Umbridge, "I see now what you meant. I just Googled how to do it, and it seems the time frame necessary has passed, and the written recall I sent the coaches will have to suffice." In the meantime, one of our attorney stakeholders responded, "Thank you for your email. Unfortunately, by the time I received your recall, I read the policy. Thank you for the update." All was quiet on the Western Front for a few days when I received another email indicating that she would like to meet with me the following week. I gladly acquiesced. Now, this meeting was the very first time that I've ever been screamed at by an adult in a professional, white-collar environment. The meeting lasted an hour. She asked me if I saw anything wrong with sending the internal policy to our external attorney stakeholders. I told her I did not. She then tried for a good 5 minutes to trap me in an honor code violation by getting me to admit that I knew I was in the wrong. I stuck to my guns. If she had nothing to hide, then she should not have minded the policy getting out. She accused me of using the stakeholder attorneys as leverage. I agreed that's exactly what I was doing, but that she was the source of her own pain since she was the one creating the policies. She then berated me for being unprofessional and asked if this was the reputation I wanted in the community. I told her I absolutely wanted to have the reputation of not rolling over when faced with a bully, fighting with passion for causes I believe in, and being a creative, strategic advocate for my cause. After an hour, I got up and I thanked her for her time and we parted ways. And to give you an idea of how bad the meeting was and how degraded our relationship was, she emailed me a few days later asking if I recorded the conversation. Unfortunately, I had not. The stakeholder attorneys end up requesting a meeting with the dean. He agreed, and they all went out and had a beer. Umbridge went along. The policy was rolled back, and the attorney stakeholders are satisfied. The administration is satisfied, but the dean certainly wasn't happy to have to deal with this petty, bureaucratic nonsense. I have a job lined up after graduation. My boss knows I'm a fighter, and it turns out that's a desirable trait in litigation. It turns out I'll be alright after all, and it's good to know about that recall feature. That might come in handy someday. Oh man, I only wish OP made Umbridge sweat a little when she asked if he recorded that conversation and replied with a stern, "What do you think?" But yeah, reading a lot of these posts, mid-level managers really have the most inflated egos of all. And I'm just glad OP fought back. And guys, I love the part where he was like, I want a reputation of never backing down when facing a bully. What a response that was. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled People episode, where a smug Karen screams at OP in public and she destroys her career. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.